Hello, self-leaders. So this is a video in response to our self-leaders call, and I'm just going to go question by question and answer them to the extent of the knowledge I have. So what is self-leadership? What I've defined as self-leadership is being very intentional and in control of the principles that we choose to live and actually living them, because our day-to-day actions, our thoughts, everything really just revolves back to our principles. So that is just the first step that makes the most sense, is to choose those principles intentionally and live based on those. And the results and actions all come as a result of the principles that we choose to live. And the main points of being a self-leader, I think, after being clear on your principles, is living to help other people get their principles straight, or get clarity on their principles, and living selflessly and not just for yourself, because we have no choice but to be interdependent with other people in this planet, in this reality. And to live selfishly, I've just noticed, is probably the most unfulfilling thing ever. And looking around at everything going on in the world, no matter how much money you make, or how much relationships you think you have, or how much sex you have, or how much things you have, right? It doesn't matter, because you'll still end up in your bed, either alone or with someone you don't really care about. And it's at that point that you have to stop and reflect, and you either suppress those thoughts that come up, or you address them and the reality of everything going on. Why are self-leaders necessary today? Because you don't have a choice but to be a self-leader, honestly. Like, we've always had freedom of choice, whether people understood it or not. But now I think we're at a time where we have less options than ever, in terms of what we could be doing with our future. And if we don't get clarity in terms of what those options are and practically see where we stay within them, then we're not able to address that. There are not very many options but being a self-leader. Like, to think people can still be driving Uber or can still work a cashier job is something that is going to be a harsh reality for a lot of people to face, and realize that it's very easy to hire a robot to do that. Like, even me, like, at first with the deli, I was very resistant and adamant about, oh no, I will never get a robot in there. I love having humans and paying humans and helping them support their families, and I do, right? But if it gets to a point where there's no choice but to use automation, then I don't know if I'm going to have that option or not. And if I have to be in a position to have a robot there, then I will. And it's a reflection on the people who needed that position, and them not being educated enough to do what's next, or really progress themselves. And why are people not self-leaders? I feel like everyone wants to be a self-leader. It's based on their programming and how they were raised, and what was, going on there. Like, even myself, I could see points in my life where it could have been very easy for me to take another route, but whether intentionally or not, there were certain things that were said to me or programmed within me, whether it be through my parents or a quote-unquote authority. And thankfully, me having a high enough teachability index, as soon as those seeds started to sprout, I went further and started planting my own seeds and started really reaping the seeds that were already there. Why are politics based on followers, and why are self-leaders independent? These are two questions I'm happy were asked, and I know I want more knowledge about. But from what I can see currently, politics are based on followers because the world is full of followers, and that's how you actually get things done, is by having people just listen to you and do what you tell them. And why are self-leaders independent? Because we don't need a leader, we need each other. And we all know how to lead ourselves as long as our programming is right. Avery said something really cool once, which is perfection equals programming. And if we all have the right programming, if the world was just programmed properly, then we all can be our own self-leaders, because we can all be and live from a self-directive principle. And how does Jin, Techno Tudor, and Destiny work best together? I think those three as a triangle is the coolest thing ever, because Jin is like the system, in the concepts and the basics, and honestly, like, the best way to run a business, from what I've noticed. Like, my results in the store have went from 0 to 100 as soon as I implemented the Jin principles, and not just talk about the principles, but live them. Like, who do I listen to? As soon as I stopped listening to people who didn't make money, and I started listening to people who did know how to make money, and applied that to the business that was making money, I started making more money. And having a high teachability index and not getting stuck in the ways I was doing things, being willing to experiment and try new things, and the training balance scale, making sure that whenever I was in the store, I was bringing the right perspective to things and helping enlighten everyone involved and really painting the vision for them in that sense. And then the 4 basics, never stop learning, always, getting the right things at unconscious competence, and then being in very intentionally in conscious competence with the right things. And then, of course, mastering the basics. And then Techno Tutor being just the cream of the crop there, because now being able to really structure the things that needed to go into conscious competence and having them kind of streamlined into unconscious competence. And, of course, live them day to day. But Techno Tutor was the way that it took everything that would have taken forever to get into the unconscious and is able to get them in there right away. And then also, I've just noticed that within doing Techno Tutor, to be able to do self-forgiveness with that kind of all together has just created the most growth for me. And then Destiny being the principles and the understanding around our minds and who we are. And that, I think, has been, man, it's been really trippy seeing that and how that played out. But still going through DIP Light, and that's been an amazing process. I'm about halfway through, and I've noticed just every step of the way, more of the onion that's peeled off of the mind consciousness system, just everything around just amplifies with that. And yeah, I'm really happy for these talking points. Thanks, Cameron. And until next time.